Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for this very exciting discussion about kickstarting out of home in 2023. Thank you to those who have joined along this series. This is the third chat we're having in the series. Thanks to anybody who's new, and welcome to the space. I'd like to say a special thank you to our sponsors for today, JCDecaux, Inside Outdoor, and Hivestack, as well as Arena Events. Thank you so much. And I'm also very excited to introduce our panelists to you guys. We've got some international guests joining us. We've got some local guests joining us. And yeah, I think it's going to be a wonderful discussion. Before we get stuck in, I just want to remind everybody that we mentioned on our previous panel, but in case you're new to this panel, we're launching a website called dooh.co.za, so it's D-O-O-H. Please visit the site if you haven't already and subscribe to our newsletter. The site goes live in the middle of March, and it's going to be a central hub where I'm going to be pulling together thought leadership pieces, inviting colleagues of mine in the industry to share their opinion pieces, as well as case studies and research. And it's really about building a collaborative hub across Africa for digital out-of-home information. So if you haven't signed up already, please do so. And yeah, let me kick off straight into our panels. And I want to welcome Will to the panel, who is the Managing Director of EMEA Hivestack. Thanks for joining us, Will, from cold London.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And, Will, in the programmatic digital out-of-home space, I think that we're in this space at the moment where we're not new, we're not trialing, but we're also not experienced. So we're in this, like, we know a little bit about stuff. We've been exploring, some guys more so than others, but we definitely are a market that's emerging in that space. And I wanted to find out from you, what do you see the out-of-home landscape in South Africa holding in the programmatic space specifically going forward into 2023?
Yeah, really, really interesting, because actually it's been fascinating watching South Africa develop from the UK. And actually, I don't think you guys give yourselves as much credit as you deserve. Actually, in terms of programmatic digital out-of-home innovation and creativity and development, you're actually one of the fastest markets that I've operated across the EMEA space. And certainly there seems to be sort of different stages of development, and whether it be really kind of starter markets or emerging markets or developed, you've really gone from being a starter market at the beginning of 2022, really, to being a fully fledged sort of programmatic digital out-of-home market. So it's been really, really interesting to watch. And a lot of it's been driven by the supply side, which is quite unusual to see as well. So it's really good to come to buyers with a scaled solution for out-of-home already. But certainly, look, your ability in South Africa to take risks, and it was really good to hear, Deli talk about that at the beginning of this panel as well. Innovate as well. We've seen some amazing world firsts with using sort of brand activation, but delivered programmatically, anamorphic creative that's been sort of played out across various different screens. Open exchange as well is something that we don't see very much, and specifically across EMEA. Very much it's a kind of low risk P&P driven market across EMEA, but South Africa's embraced open exchange, which allows the buyers to access the market a lot quicker. And so some of these sort of big developments that take a long time to happen across other markets have happened very, very quickly in South Africa, which has been really exciting. It's been great to see, and I hope it continues into 2023.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for that. And I think we can all just pat ourselves on the back, being ahead of the curve. I'll be the first one to do it. And I think that, the African market is such an adaptive market. And I think that, I've definitely found at points in my career when we've been trialing mobile out of home and geo-targeted mobile and advanced tools and now programmatic, sometimes it feels like everybody else in the rest of the world is much further ahead of us and they know much more than we do. And I think it's so important what you've highlighted is that when you bring it back down, the market can adapt quickly. It's an emerging market that changes quickly. It's being developed. It can quicken learn faster than some of the legacy markets. And I think that it's really something for us to just keep on reminding ourselves that it's not always about what's happening overseas and we're so far behind. In some cases, we're ahead of that curve. And I think that that's great that you've raised that point. Thank you. And well, we've discussed how amazing South Africa is and ahead of the curve we are and what a great job that we're all doing. But I wanted to find out, how do we fast track our growth? So I understand that the market is adapting quite quickly and we're moving forward. But from your experience, how do we build on what we already have done in the programmatic digital out-of-home space, and how do we take it to the next level?
Yeah, there's some really interesting points being made here. So the first one is you absolutely, on both sides of the fence, both demand and supply, have to have someone that leans into the space. You have to have a champion of programmatic digital out of home. You've got a challenge really because you're kind of smashing together two specialisms, like people were saying there, like Jonas mentioned. You've got programmatic, from the online space, and then you've also got out of home, and they're very nuanced. And you're trying to develop a specialism for both. And so that's what we've been trying to develop over the past year or two. And this is where you start to bring in the new buyers, because you need to have a standardization of kind of jargon across both digital and the out-of-home space to bring them both together. And from a technology standpoint, we've bridged that gap. That's been done. Then it becomes a point of how do you then bring the digital buyers into the out-of-home space, and how do we kind of get the technology side of this all connected between demand and supply? And you have to have champions. If you don't have someone who's really leaning into the space, who's dedicated, wants to explore this space, it does become very, very difficult to get to that next level of kind of programmatic delivery. And that's something that we see an awful lot of across the market. So the markets that have been really sort of achieved this have really had that kind of specialism in place, because there's a lot to explore now. So you've got a lot of DSPs in market, whether they be specialists like ourselves or the omni-channels. They all offer something very, very different. And they also connect to the supply side in very, very different ways. And so there's a lot to explore there, but there's a lot of information, there's a lot of testing that's going on. And so first of all, you kind of have to find a way in which you can work and align programmatic with what you're doing. And I mean that from an out-of-home perspective, with what you're doing from the digital space, which was mentioned earlier. I would love to see more and more movement away from out-of-home campaign-based activation. So 2 weeks, 4 weeks. For some reason, even though now we've moved into this programmatic space, we still want to activate 2 weeks or 4 weeks campaigns. Why are we not always on anymore? We have the ability to activate both brands, performance-driven activity. We also have the ability to, like the online space, trigger activations based on certain events that happen, whether it be traffic speed, weather, temperature, UV, pollen. There's so many different layers of multiple strategies that you can build into a programmatic activation that are completely aligned to what the online space does. And that's where I feel that, like rightly said at the beginning, out-of-home doesn't become an afterthought. It's part of what is an outcomes-driven, screen-agnostic solution within agencies. That is a very, very different way of thinking and very difficult to build in agencies when they're in silos. And my background is agencies, so I've seen this happen firsthand. We come together as a team, we get briefed on a campaign, and then we all go away to our desk and plan separately. And that's a very difficult thing to overcome. And certainly there are some agencies that are doing that better than others. It's really good to see that the digital specialists are coming into the space. And I think we need to embrace that and provide them with the tools to understand the out-of-home space, the nuances of it, visualize what the out-of-home space brings to the table to make it easy for them to lean into it. And I think that's where you'll see the growth come from.
Yeah, thanks so much, Will. And I think also you've raised so many good points around, again, the silos have come up, and I love you almost need like a cheerleader in that space to help drive it forward. It's not going to happen on its own because it's too complex to just automatically plug in and let it happen on its own. It requires so much integration and so much dedication, and I'm really passionate about having intentional out of home, not just booking a site because you became lazy and it was kind of there and you booked it and you moved on with your life. It's really about having the care and attention that goes into being intentional with your out of home and also using data to support it. I love that you've touched on dynamic. Like dynamic really needs a cheerleader. I don't know what kind of a cheerleader. It needs like a crew. It needs like a PR team because I think we all understand what dynamic is, and we all understand that you can have weather triggers and pollen triggers and UV filters and all of those type of triggers. But I'm not seeing enough of that happening in the markets. And I really think that, again, and I've been in the rooms when the idea is presented and everyone's very happy and keen and excited, and then the creative arrives and the ideas fall flat and you're trying to figure out where did it get dropped in the chain, because these amazing ideas are dying somewhere along the way from it could be, like I said, lack of attention, lack of budget, lack of time. Everything has to be quick, but I think that we can be doing better in that space, and programmatic really enables that so beautifully. So thank you for that. We've had another question from the audience, and Will, I'm going to post this question to you. So the question is that If an anamorphic campaign can take 3 to 6 weeks to deploy, what are the commercial reasons for buying the space programmatically?
Well, I mean, it goes back very much to what I was saying earlier, is that one of the benefits of programmatic is the end-to-end activation, yeah? And also to be able to have multi-layered strategies that exist within the same point. So what you can do then is have your big brand moments that exists anamorphically, and obviously require a little bit of build time, but it's a burst of activity that's brand. But you can also have an always-on layer of activation that aligns with your digital performance. It plays into that. You can also measure it as an ongoing and actually optimize. So this is the biggest step change that we've got, is that once the campaign goes live, we've built these sort of custom audiences that you can create, which is brilliant. We can monitor performance, we can adjust delivery based on what our KPIs are for that campaign, but we can also measure the effectiveness of that at the end. So the anamorphic part is one part in a much bigger, wider out-of-home strategy that sits within a bigger strategy across full comms planning. And that's the bit that's really exciting for me specifically, as coming from a planning background, and something that I really love to do. And it's something that you never were able to do. And imagine, again, the same with the Piccadilly Lights has been mentioned a number of times. That's just one part of typically what exists as a kind of wider out-of-home activation, but to be able to house those all into one platform, optimize it end to end, and as you measure the effectiveness of the collective digital out-of-home, not just one element of it, but collectively, is an important step change in what we do for out-of-home, because the accountability part is the bit that was missing. And now that's quite exciting, because you can now align your screen solution with what you're doing across multiple channels. And that's the kind of big reason why anamorphic sits within a wider strategy.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I think that you've answered the question perfectly. So thank you very much for that. Well, that brings us to the end of our discussion today. I'd like to say another really big thank you to the amazing panelists who've joined us today. A thank you to our sponsors, Hivestack, JCDecaux, and Insight Outdoor, and the Arena Events team. And just a reminder, again, about the launch of do.co.za, that's launching in the middle of March. I'm really looking forward to bringing some amazing digital out-of-home content as a central hub for the community to grow together. If you haven't visited the site to subscribe for the newsletter, please do so. And yeah, thank you so much to everybody who's joined us today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this discussion about all things out of home. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what the year ahead holds for us. So thank you to everybody.